There's one unique skill that got me my first job in data, and no, it wasn't SQL. It was actually domain knowledge. Recently, I did a video on the top skills of the top 1% of data analysts, and one of those skills was domain knowledge. Got a lot of great feedback, so I wanted to create a video to address that question and talk about that topic of domain knowledge. So my plan for today is to talk about what domain knowledge is, why it's important, and some tips for how you can try to acquire domain knowledge for your target field. So let's dive in. So let's start by talking about what is domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is tricky because essentially it's experience related to a specific field or industry. It's a little bit hard to develop because it's mainly based on your experience. So when we're talking about domain knowledge, we're talking about your expertise or the experience you have in a specific field and leveraging that to get a job in data. So that's a good excuse to talk about why domain knowledge is important. So domain knowledge helps you to overcome the technical gap that you may have with a specific role. So in my case, I worked in billing and collections, first as an analyst, then as a supervisor, and I wanted to become a business analyst and officially kind of have a more data-centric role. I was new to the data field, so I leveraged the domain knowledge I had by applying, interviewing, and accepting an offer as a business analyst with the credit and collections department. And after I got the job, I sat down with my manager and they told me they interviewed people who were more technically advanced than me, but what stood out to them about me was I had experience with that specific department, credit and collections, and so they felt that would be an advantage to them. And since joining data, I've seen many other people with similar experiences. I've spoken to many hiring managers who value that skill as well, in addition to a few others that I address in that top 1% skills video. But as far as domain knowledge goes, it helps you cover that experience gap. In my case, didn't have experience related to data. Domain knowledge helped me to cross that gap. And from a more technical or practical standpoint, the reason domain knowledge is important is that it gives you more context for the problems you're going to be solving, the questions you're going to be answering, the data you're going to be looking at, and it helps you to solve problems better as a result. So yes, it's a very valuable skill for job seekers, especially those who are more entry level. But on a practical note, like why it's actually valuable to employers is it gives you more context to answer those business questions. It takes time to learn data. And while there's always going to be differences between specific companies, understanding the data in your field is going to help you ultimately get up and running more quickly. Okay, so now let's talk about how you can leverage your existing experience to get a job in data using domain knowledge. So any experience you have can ultimately be used to leverage an opportunity. What I mean by that is it's very likely that if you look at any job you've had through the correct lens, you can apply some kind of skills from that role into your target role. Soft skills are especially great for this. So let's take problem solving ability as an example. That's another really great skill that a lot of hiring managers look for. If you could explain in a role that you've had how you've leveraged problem solving ability and talk about that in your resume, talk about that in the interview, that's going to help you cover some of those gaps we mentioned earlier. And you can do this with an array of different soft skills and sometimes technical skills too. If you've used like Excel to some extent and you've used it technically in a certain role, maybe that's the only skill you had access to, but you used it in an analytical capacity, you can speak to that in a data interview. So even if you haven't had professional experience with certain tools, you can leverage the experience you've had with certain tools in an analytical way. I've made career jumps several times in the course of my career in the last over a decade, and I've learned how to take certain skills or find certain skills rather in a job I was doing and apply them to the context of the role I was applying for. And sometimes you have to really think about that, but almost every time there's something you can pick out to leverage. So that's not like industry specific experience per se, but I wanted to bring it up because when we're talking about leveraging some sort of experience or knowledge, whether that's industry specific or otherwise, through the right lens, skills, and identifying the right skills and communicating them effectively can help you to stand out as a job candidate. And that's ultimately what we're talking about today. One more way that you can demonstrate this knowledge, this domain knowledge, or leveraging prior experience, even if it doesn't seem inherently relevant, is through your portfolio. So if you create a portfolio with context to the type of role you're getting into or trying to get into, that can help prove to employers or whoever's looking at your portfolio or whatever that you have some of the know-how. So let's say you want to be a financial analyst. Well, taking data sets related to financial information and creating some financial reports and dashboards, analyses out of it, that's one way that you can, again, continue to cover that experience gap and show that you have some of the know-how of the industry. Let's take another example. Let's say you want to be a marketing analyst. Well, you can take some marketing data, some customer data, some churn analysis, something like that, and create a series of projects to give your portfolio some context towards the role that you want. So even if you don't have direct experience as a marketing analyst, you can show that you have some of the know-how or that you are prepared to look at that type of data through the projects that you work with and making sure they're quality projects that fit within that domain that you're trying to get into. So I often say that, like with projects, just taking a passion project and doing something fun with it is great. At the end of the day, if you could just show that you have the data skills, that's going to take you pretty far. But if you have a really specific type of role in mind, and I do talk to many people who want to be a specific type of analyst, then this is the approach you want to take. You want to start working with that type of data to build that domain knowledge and experience. The last little bit I'll talk about is some additional ways that you can try to get some of that domain knowledge aside from projects and direct experience. And I want to kind of address how to learn the language of the field you want to enter. Now, again, that's tough outside of experience and projects, which I would count as some kind of experience, but there are a few things that you could do to help. And when you do all these things we're talking about today in conjunction, it's only going to help. You want to do as much as you can anyways, right? So you might as well do these things if you don't have the knowledge. So the first thing is connecting with people in the field you want to get into. So if you've seen some of my videos before, you'll probably learn that I'm very bullish when it comes to having a LinkedIn presence and building a personal brand on LinkedIn. I've seen so many people, I've worked with clients who've gotten a job in data not by blindly applying to a bunch of jobs, but by leveraging connections and getting referrals. So connecting with people. So again, let's use the example of someone who wants to be a marketing analyst. Well, start to get involved in LinkedIn and meeting people, posting, engaging, commenting, all those things, and connecting with other people who are marketing analysts. Get to know them. I wouldn't recommend just like pitch slapping them and messaging them saying, look at my resume, do you have a referral? That's a terrible, terrible, terrible approach. You want to take a long-term approach of building a connection. So again, say you want to be a marketing analyst, you find someone who's a marketing analyst on LinkedIn, send them a very kind message and try to set up just a coffee chat, something like that. Or if it's someone who is involved on LinkedIn and they're posting, engaging with their content to kind of warm up that relationship, and then just getting to know them through DMs and setting up a coffee chat to learn about what they do. Then you could at least have an insider view of that type of role, maybe get to know the data and the type of work they do through talking to them. So connecting with people, I think that's a really big one and something that's going to help you out a lot. And it could turn into a referral eventually, you never know. And then another thing that this is more for when you're approaching an interview, but reading up on the company that you're about to interview with. So let's say you are going to be interviewing with some kind of digital e-commerce platform. Well, Google them, look up some articles related to what they've been doing in the news, get to know their website really well, understand their platform. And if they're a publicly trading company, then you can get a little bit more information because there's going to be more information available related to their financials. But the more you can come into that interview prepared to share your knowledge of that company and not just the industry, but the company specifically, that's going to help you. And that'll at least show that you've put time into understanding understanding that industry and that product or platform or business specifically. So huge recommendation there. Anytime I've done that and come to an interview prepared with that knowledge, it's always been a big plus and stood out to the interviewers and helped me in some way. So let's recap what we talked about today. What is domain knowledge? It's industry-specific experience and knowledge that you can leverage going into a new job. And why it's important is it can help you overcome that skill gap, give you context for the data you're working with, and help you to solve problems better. And you want to use this knowledge to leverage your existing experience. But even if you don't have specific domain experience, you can still leverage some of the skills and experience you have from previous jobs, looking at them in the right context, identifying the right skills and speaking to them effectively and appropriately. You also want to create a portfolio with context. You want to create projects using the type of data related to the field you want to enter and building out a portfolio with that type of material. And lastly, try to learn the language of the industry you want to enter by connecting with other professionals in that field and reading up on the companies you want to work with. So that's what I got for you today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Definitely helps the channel. And check out this video over here where I go over the top skills of the top 1% of data analysts. Definitely don't want to miss that. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.